Currently, we know how to validate some individual form controls using built-in and custom validators. It is often more than enough, but sometimes we face the situation when the final validation state depends on values from multiple fields. You have probably seen some sign-up forms where you have to create the password and then repeat this password before you submit the button. And this UX pattern allows to drastically decrease a chance of typo in the password field so that users will not be disappointed why the password they just entered isn't working anymore. This is a perfect use case for cross-field validation, and in this lesson we are going to implement exactly this pattern. First of all, we would need to additionally create a new group of controls that contains form controls for password and confirm password and connect corresponding fields in our form template. You actually know how to do all that stuff, so to not waste your time, I will just quickly pause the video and get back to you once I have done it. Alright, I'm back. So as you can see, I just created an additional group called password that contains a couple of fields, one for the password and the second one for confirm password. The password control has a couple of validators, namely required and min lengths, and the confirm password is just an input without any validators, because the only validation rule for this control is to be the same as the password control. In the template, I bind the newly created password form group using the form group name directive, and in a similar way, I bind the password form controls with the form control name directive. Additionally, the password form control has some validation messages there below that are being shown when a corresponding validation error exists for the control. And this is how it looks like in the browser, and as you can see, it works fine. Okay, now let's move forward and create a custom cross-field validator. Some small spoiler, the cross-field validator has almost no difference from the custom validator we implemented before, with the only one difference being that it should be applied to the form group. Alright, I create a separate file, likewise I did it for the previous validator, and there I'm going to create a validator function that takes an abstract control as an argument and returns either an error object or null if the control value is valid. So far, let's just console log the control to see what exactly we get as a control in the validation function argument, and yeah, let's return just null for now. Well, basically now it is a valid validator function, so we could apply it to our password form group. You can do that by providing a configuration object as a second parameter for the group builder, and the object should have a property validators, which can be either a single validator function or an array of validators. I'm not going to apply any other validators, so I will leave it as a single function. Good. Now let's go to the browser and try to enter anything in any of our password fields. You can see that whenever one of the form controls within the group changes, the validator function is triggered and provides the instance of the corresponding form group, and this form group has all necessary controls to perform the proper validation. So it means that I can go to my validator function, and using the get method, I can get a reference to the password form control in this group. And also I can do the same to get a reference to the confirm password. And then I can just compare if the values of both controls are equal, and then I consider the group as a valid one. Otherwise, I have to return some error object that will contain the following data. And now we can test it. So I enter a valid password in the first field, and then I enter almost the same password into the confirm password, but Somehow strange, isn't it? We see that both fields are kind of valid, but actually the cross-field validator works because despite the form controls are valid independently from each other, as a group they are invalid because the confirmed password doesn't match the original one. I can prove it by investigating the source code of the group. As you can see right here, the CSS class ngInvalid has been attached to the field set node. But when I make the passwords equal, then it becomes valid and you can see a corresponding CSS class. So now we just have to adjust our styles a little bit and highlight this password group with a red border if passwords do not match. Additionally, I would like to have also an error message under the confirm password form field that will give the user some feedback regarding the actual error. So let's get started with the first task and adjust styles. To do that, I will go to the global styles, and here you can see that currently all elements with form group name attribute are excluded from getting the red border. But in fact, I would like to include only the address group, so I will explicitly specify that. Now I save changes and go back to the browser, so you can see that the group gets a red border when my cross validator is invalid and it disappears when passwords become equal. The only remaining thing is to add the error message here below and make the field invalid to not confuse the user. Okay. Let's go back, and here I would need to refactor my validator function a little bit. So first of all, let's check the case when the group is valid and return immediately null. Then we have to return the error object, right? Right. However, this error will trigger the error for the group, but not for the confirm password field. By the way, this is exactly the reason why the confirm password form field is highlighted as a valid one. So we need to set errors for this control manually by calling the setError method for the confirm password control. And of course, we have to provide some error object. It might be an object that is different from what is returned for the form group, but in my case, I can use the same object and maybe assign it to some separate constant to not repeat the code. And here, everything should be also replaced. Cool. So now if we go to the browser and try to enter confirm password that doesn't match the original one, you can see that the corresponding field is invalid, which proves that the error object has been added to the control. As a last step, we just have to add an appropriate message below. So I go back to the form template and somewhere, maybe here below, I'm going to add a wrapper as well as a template for the error message itself, right? And here we will add a condition like, I don't know, show the error if this control has an error with the key password should match, just like that. And yeah, and this field needs to be dirty as well. All right, and now we can do the final check. And I go to the browser, I enter the password, then I confirm it. While they are not equal, I see the error message, but once I properly confirm the password, the error disappears. Fantastic. Now let's quickly recap what we have learned today. Cross-field validator is a custom validator that validates controls in combination. Technically, they have no difference from the regular custom validators. The only difference is that you apply this validator to the form group instead of a single form control, and that's why the validate method takes as an argument the instance of the form group instead of form control. Because the form group instance has a reference to its child controls, you can access them directly in the validator method and use its values for your validation logic, or you can manually set up errors and do many other things.